Greetings, YouTube. One of my subscribers, Kung Fulai, was confused when I posted my first component of my role-playing game collection tour. He doesn't know what a role-playing game is, and I thought I would do a very brief kind of overview of what a role-playing game is. This is going to be fast and dirty, and it's probably going to miss out details that people who are in the hobby are going to say I should have left in. And I apologize up front. This is just to inform someone who's never encountered one what it is. This, right here, this book, is a tabletop role-playing game. This particular book is a complete game. Everything you need to play is in this book. This is a very old book. It's a classic version of the Dungeons & Dragons game. It's called the Rules Encyclopedia. It is actually a compilation of a number of boxed games that were put out a very long time ago, and were eventually put together into one volume that people could have access to. This particular one was a great find. It's in horrible shape. I picked it up at a yard sale for $1, so I couldn't really beat that. So what is a tabletop role-playing game? A tabletop role-playing game is an interactive cooperative game that takes place around a table or in a living room by a group of people. I always found that a person in charge of the game, known as the game master or dungeon master, and 4 to 5 players was the best number. I prefer 4. I'll do 5 not a problem. More than that, I think you end up with not enough spotlight time, and things get very cumbersome when you start doing large, complex activities like combat. So how do you play it? Well, one person, as I mentioned, is in charge of the game master, a role that I often play when I involve myself in the hobby, also known as the dungeon master. And this person runs the world, and when I say that, they run the entire fictional world that the game takes place in. So we're going to say that I'm running a game that takes place in the world of James Bond, for example. In that case, I am the writer, I am the director, I am everyone in the world except the people playing the individuals in the game. So if it was a one-on-one game and one person was playing James Bond, that person would run that character. They are James Bond, they would be making the decisions for James Bond, and everything else that went on in that world would be controlled by the game master. Now in a fantasy setting, the classic example being, of course, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, Tolkien was the master. He was the creator, he was the writer, he crafted that world, and in a role-playing version of that, the people playing the individual characters, the hobbits, for example, would be the player characters. Now, each person that is at the table is known as a player, and they run a player character, which is a single character that they run. They can create this character from usually a repertoire of different skill classes. They could be like a wizard, they could be a fighter, they could be a thief, they could be a skald or a bard. And they usually have an opportunity to choose different races. They can play a human, an elf, a dwarf, a hobbit, things like that. Though we tend to call them halflings so we don't get sued. Besides the book I just mentioned, you're going to need notebooks, papers, maybe some graph paper, pencils, and you're going to need dice. Now the dice are designed to create random numbers, and we do this to add in an element of surprise and an element of the unknown, because in real life, when you try to do something, you don't always succeed. The better you get at something, the better chance you have of success. But even the best person at something, some days they fail. So we use dice. Now the dice we use are kind of interesting. For example, that is a 4-sided die. It only has 4 sides, shaped like a pyramid. And here we have a classic 6-sided die. And this one, whoops, is a death die. We have an 8-sided die, one of my favorite 8-sided dies. 10-sideds, 12, and for some reason this has always been my favorite 12-sided die. I don't know why. 20-sided dies, which come in many, many colors. I have many 20-sided dies. But occasionally you encounter a more unusual dice. For example, this is a 30-sided die, and this behemoth is a 100-sided die, which I've never actually rolled in a game, but I think it's cool anyway. I should do a video on all my dice. I have all kinds of different dice. But you use these different dice to generate random numbers within the game. So, for example, the person running the game master, says, I would like you to roll a die 20 because you've decided you want to hit that orc with a sword. You roll a die 20, there's a target number you need to hit, and if you roll that target number or higher, in the case of D&D here, you hit your target. Different games have different mechanics. It can get very confusing, so I'm not going to cover those. This is a very basic overview of what it is. And once you hit your target, normally if you say you're swinging a sword, you then have to figure out how much damage is done. And you do this by rolling a die, say die 8, which is a classic dice for a longsword in D&D. And then you add in any bonuses you have because you're very strong, or because you have particular skill at striking people in a very precise manner, or because you have a great skill in something. You've invested a lot of time and effort at becoming very good with swords. And you can have a negative to that roll, say if you're a halfling or a hobbit trying to wield a really big sword and you're bad at it. So, things like this happen. I know this is a fast and dirty video. I know it's just barely covering what a role-playing game is. But once you get these elements down, the concept that one guy's in charge, there are people playing individual characters, we use dice to come up with random numbers. What you do with these components is you create stories. The Game Master presents a world, presents an outline, and the people in the game play within that world. In the best possible version of this, it's almost like he's presenting you with a sandbox and saying, build anything you want. Now there are limits, there are confines to a box, and there are confines to the components. You are given the things to build with, to play with, and the GM, then the Game Master, gives you those things. And you get to do with what you want within that sandbox, within that play space. And if you do it right, everybody has a good time. And what you build is interactive. Not only you're doing things that the other people can react to, but the person that runs the game can. And you can take the game, if you're a good player, into directions that the Game Master never considered. Because no matter how much I've planned, no matter how many contingencies I have said that I have figured out, the players will always come up with something that I never even conceived. And that's the beauty of this. Because if you always spend your time in here, all you are is a frustrated novelist. When you do a role-playing game, you have back and forth. You can have interactions, you can have laughter, and you can have fun, and you can have memories that you will hold forever. And that will bring you into a hobby that can be a lifelong passion. I mean, I've been involved in this since I was 14. I'll be 48 next month. That's a long time to be involved in a hobby. I have reams of role-playing games, all of which eventually I will show in some kind of a video. And I've decided that I should take the covers off of my classic D&D books and put them into one of the videos. So I hope that this answers some of your questions, Kung Fu. I also hope I am not butchering your name, because I'm not actually sure how you say it. The last part of your name. Kung Fu that I got, but the A part, I think there's A or I, or I'm not really positive. So if you have any further questions, feel free to comment below or send me a private message. I will send you a link to this video because I don't know if you watch all my role-playing game videos or not. You probably don't because you aren't all that interested in them, and I can understand that. So I will be very much looking forward to comments from people who are in the hobby. Tell me, how far off base am I? Have I completely presented this in a way that makes no sense to you? Do you think that I've dropped the ball? Or do you think I actually presented the game in a way that makes sense to people who have never been exposed to them? So, comment away, folks. I look forward to your interaction, because frankly, that's what this hobby is all about.